Welcome, everybody. I'm Mark Medina with the LA Times Lakers blog. We're in the dog days of summer. There's an NBA lockout. The news mostly consists of whether or not players, such as Kobe Bryant, will play overseas. And unlike other past off seasons, we can't really spend the summer analyzing the recent free agent signings. But that all changes this week. There is some news going on in the basketball world with the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame taking place Friday at Springfield, Massachusetts. And there, longtime Lakers assistant coach Tex Winter will finally be inducted into the Hall of Fame. We're going to talk to someone who's going to make the trip to see the ceremony. We bring in longtime Lakers author Roland Lazenby, who's known Tex Winter very well dating back to his days as a Chicago Bulls assistant coach. He's also written about Winter extensively in various books. That includes Mind Games, Phil Jackson's Long Strange Journey, and it includes Mad Game, the NBA education of Kobe Bryant. So it's going to be a real treat to have Roland on here today. Roland, thanks for taking the time. How are you doing today?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great. It's an exciting week.
No, that's for sure. And first things first, I mean, we've talked last year when Winter was, inducted in the Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, and it seems like this conversation comes up every year, wondering why Winter was getting overlooked during that process, besides his role as a contributor. This year, were there any signs lead into the announcement that gave you any reason to think this would finally be the year that he would get in?
Well, there was a little bit of loosening in attitude, but you couldn't be sure he'd been turned down so much. I remember talking to Tommy Heinsohn, who sort of, the Celtics player and coach from the great Russell teams, and then the 70s when he coached the Celtics to a couple of championships. And I talked to Tommy Heinsohn about it and encountered that old attitude. And Tommy Heinsohn told me, he said, yeah, if they ever have a Hall of Fame for assistant coaches, I'm sure Tex will get in. And there was just this entrenched attitude that Tex was not worthy of it, which was unbelievable. But it involves larger factors than just Tex himself.
And what were some of those factors, do you think?
Well, if you look at all the old Celtics teams, coached first by Red Auerbach and then even into the Bird teams, those were not X's and O's teams. Pro basketball was not a business of X's and O's. You had great players who knew how to play. It was not a time of a lot of help defense. There was not much double teaming. There were none of those factors where the league was in any way overcoached. And these players, it was a players' league. You had great team leaders like a Bill Russell or a Larry Bird, and they had tremendous faith in themselves. And it wasn't about coaching. But then along came the late 80s, early 90s, and the Pistons started to get very, very physical. We started to see the big influence of X's and O's in terms of defense, the tremendous physical defenses that Michael Jordan faced, and suddenly this disciplined way of playing basketball, the triangle was really made to order for the era. And it was used to counter a lot of the physical defenses that were virtually squeezing offense out of the game.
We're speaking with longtime Lakers author Roland Lazenby. You can follow him on Twitter at Lazenby. And Roland, you've actually written on your Twitter account that you learned about the NBA from Tex Winter. What did he teach you exactly?
Oh, everything. So much about, when you're observing the NBA, particularly the non-triangle NBA, the NBA that doesn't use system basketball, it's really a pretty basic mano-a-mano thing. You throw the ball down to the big hoss, try to draw a double team, and then, swing the ball a little bit and try to go to work. And kick it out, pitch it out for an open jumper or whatever you can find. And those kinds of things are fine, but once the defenses really started to clamp down and they were really physical, the triangle suddenly created this opportunity where you could overload one side, and then you could put somebody like a Michael Jordan either in the pinch post or over on the weak side. And you could get the defense out of balance on the floor, and you could attack from the weak side. And it created situations where you could take really fine teams that of course included great players, and you could make it very difficult to double team those great players. Lakers fans saw that with the difficulty teams often had double teaming Kobe Bryant in the triangle.
Now, former Lakers coach Phil Jackson, he's going to be the presenter for Winter, and also Dennis Rodman. You've written about him over the years as well. But over the years, Phil's often talked about how Winter was his mentor in helping him put together the drills to teach the triangle. And he's also mentioned how Winter was often his contrarian. He wasn't afraid to criticize his coaching. How would you characterize that dynamic in a relationship?
Well, it was critical. The triangle was this beautifully disciplined offensive approach. And, of course, the floor balance it brought made it also a thing that created a great defensive approach. That floor balance meant players could get back. But none of it would have worked at the pro level without these marvelously disciplined players to go with it. And, it began in Chicago once Michael Jordan and a Scottie Pippen bought in. These are guys who were work monsters. They were so dedicated to practice. They were eager to learn. They soaked it all up. Of course, soaking it up, you had Tex teaching Phil, Tex who had designed the system, who analyzed all the games, who broke down all the tape for Phil, and literally spent years upon years upon years teaching Phil. But Phil wasn't just some passive recipient. He was this tremendous guy in terms of the mental approach to the game. He developed the players in terms of their mental approach. These, again, were very receptive players. And not just in Chicago, Kobe Bryant brought that same kind of willfulness, that pursuit of greatness that made all of this possible. And so Tex created the system. He taught and he taught. And he did so many wonderful things, but it required the dedication of these players, and not just the stars, but the role players. I was thinking, all this worked so well in Chicago, and of course Lakers fans are very aware of what it did in Los Angeles. But what Los Angeles fans really owe Tex Winter is his friendship and mentorship of Kobe Bryant. And Kobe was this force of nature who was again, this incredible worker, but he was young. He had not played in a college system, and he was friendless. He was on an island. And Tex Winter, I saw him do it with Dennis Rodman. Tex was Kobe Bryant's friend. That doesn't mean he coddled him in any way. Tex was never one to coddle anyone. But He understood that Kobe had all of his greatness in him. All of those skills were the product of Kobe's just unhuman work ethic. And so Tex came in at a time when Phil was basically ignoring Kobe, when Shaq had turned the entire roster against Kobe. And, of course, Kobe had aided in this because he was young and a lot of nights impulsive and sometimes foolish. And Tex came in and said, Kobe, I remember the earliest days of my conversations with Tex. He said, Kobe is a good factor, a force in this game. And he needs to be worked with, and he needs to be encouraged. And he basically needed that friend, that source he could trust. And Tex Winter, he did the same with Dennis Rodman in Chicago. And it's so fitting that Dennis Rodman is going in with Tex. And Tex had this ability to be on their side, frankly, when a lot of other people weren't.
We're speaking with a longtime Laker author, Roland Lazenby, and interesting you brought up Kobe Bryant because in your book, Mad Game, the book about Kobe Bryant, you mentioned how Kobe approached you asking for Tex Winter's phone number. You talked about the friendship and all that. Where can you point on the basketball court as far as how that friendship and that mentorship made a difference in terms of his development?
Well, I think it began with their very first phone conversation. Tex is very frank about things, and Kobe was a loose cannon with the Lakers. He didn't know which way to turn. The Lakers weren't well organized. They were not a system team. It was old-fashioned roll-out-the-ball basketball for practices, and Kobe was very frustrated. And Tex said, Kobe, basically he said this, Kobe, your instincts are right. You need a system. You need some plan for attacking these modern defenses. And the fact that you're upset and frustrated, that is not some reflection that you're a spoiled brat. Your instincts are correct. And that began the basis of their relationship and the basis of their trust, the basis for Tex to coach Kobe. And I know Tex is going in now as a contributor, and he was a realist, but he badly wanted to be recognized as a coach because he spent 6 decades coaching just that way.
Now, Roland, while we're on the subject of Kobe, I want to share a quick anecdote that he shared to me about Tex this past year. He recalled he and his teammates were hanging out moments before the 2001 championship parade, laughing, having a good time, reflecting on the title they had just won. And apparently Tex comes in and starts criticizing them for not making fundamentally correct chest passes during the season. And Kobe remarked how everyone couldn't help but laugh about it. But you've written that Tex considers himself a guardian of the game, and covering Tex and knowing him over the years, are there any anecdotes that come to mind that best exemplify that?
Oh, he was all over Michael Jordan about chest passes. And, of course, it would infuriate Michael. And Tex was never afraid to take on the superstars and to point out these things they needed to do. And every bit of Tex's game was based on these fundamentals. Now, it sounds like the chest pass thing is silly, but Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan spent the first 15 minutes of every practice working on chest passes. I've been an AAU coach. You can't get 12-year-old kids to work on chest passes. And Tex was a bigger perfectionist than Kobe or Michael. And Michael and Kobe are the ultimate perfectionists in basketball. And so Tex understood them as perfectionists. He didn't try to be buddy-buddy all the time. He was there to confront them. It was his job to push them to a different level. Now, Phil Jackson did not want to be in that position, and so Tex was the bad cop. But everything he did was based on the fundamentals of the game. And all of those practices, all of the drills, the great thing about the 11 championships that are on Phil Jackson and Tex Winter's record is that they were all based on fundamentals and this intense dedication to the fundamentals of the game, of team play.
Yeah, you talked about Tex's role in developing Kobe. How would you characterize what Tex's role was as far as Shaq goes?
Well, Shaq and Tex never had a good relationship because Tex was going to say what he wanted to say, and he was going to challenge Shaq. And you may recall in reading Mad Game, I was doing interviews with Shaq where he said, if I have to set screens and do this and that, I'm not that kind of player. I'm the kind of guy who likes to run the floor and make faces at the camera after I dunk. And, of course, Shaq was saying that, having been in the league 7 years and really at that time had really not accomplished much. And so that was not Tex's approach to the game. And so they had quite a distance to come. The Democrats and Republicans are pretty far apart these days. But that's sort of in the sense of Tex and Shaq. But I think it's a testament, and Shaq is an honest man. Looking back on things, I think that Shaq would be the first to say, Tex is one of these guys. I had a lifetime of people coddling me and telling me how great I was, and Tex was none of that. Tex was going to speak up and say that, Shaq was trying to blame all the problems of the Lakers on Kobe, and that was not the case. A large part of the difficulty fell to both of them, and Shaq had a lot of issues about the things he wouldn't do, including his laziness and screen and roll defense and all the other things that Lakers fans have watched for years. And you had to have somebody who was unafraid, who was fearless of getting out there and challenging a superstar who's an intimidating person. My favorite Tech story comes from Dean Smith. Dean was a high school player who was pretty good. He was trying to go to the University of Kansas, and Kansas State was recruiting him, and Kansas State had this young first-year assistant coach named Tex Winter. And on the recruiting trip, Tex took Dean Smith to the swimming pool, and Tex did all these various tricks, these high diving tricks in the swimming pool for the recruits. And of course, Tex had been a pole vaulter. He'd, been in the military, in aviation. He had done a lot of different things, and you wouldn't think today of an assistant coach taking prize recruits to the pool so that he could do a diving exhibition for them. But, Tex was a high diver. He was fearless. And he was fearless in how he coached. And it's just, when I learned that story, I just laughed and laughed about Tex. What a great spirit. One of the things I love in writing about these special teams and these special people is that they are very spirited human beings. And Tex had an unbending spirit as a coach, as a person, as a man of integrity. He was always so truthful. And while he was your friend, boy, if you violated one of the principles or you didn't do something the right way, he could be a storm.
Well, we're speaking with longtime Lakers author Roland Lazenby, and Roland, the unfortunate backstory to this Hall of Fame induction centers a little bit around Tex's health. He suffered a stroke in April 2009, and after that he stepped back with some of his duties with the Lakers. Just with you knowing Tex pretty well, how can you say how he's doing health-wise these days?
Well, everything I hear is that it's not well. When you suffer a stroke like that, it's just very difficult. At the end, life is always a tragedy in one way or another for all of us and for all our families. And so that's why it's so important to think about the life that Tex lived. And yes, he was brought down by a stroke, but he was in his late 80s, and he'd been throwing around that medicine ball and jumping rope and attacking life the whole time. And his great spirit is what I keep in mind virtually every day of my life.
When you look at, you talked about the value that he brought to Phil's coaching staff and the insight that he shared on the players. And you look back these 2 years with the Lakers where they have missed his absence. Is there any particular area that you think Tex would have been most instrumental in helping, whether it's even the championship run in 2010 or this shortened playoff run this past season where they lost 4 games to the Dallas Mavericks in the semifinals?
Yes, there is. There's a place that hurts me sorely, and that is with Andrew Bynum. Now, I think Andrew is a fine young man. I think he will grow into some work ethic, but I think he has been coddled. And I think that Tex would have eventually formed a relationship with him and would have built that trust if he had come along when Tex was a little younger, and he would have built that, but he would have had absolutely no coddling whatsoever. And I think Tex would have been a big factor in Andrew Bynum's development if Andrew Bynum had shown himself worthy of it by becoming that guy with an impressive work ethic.
So in terms of him being coddled, what parts in terms of either his injury and rehab and just his overall approach to the game wouldn't be as tolerated as much under Tex's watch?
Well, I think just bringing Andrew into the team fold, I think Andrew has, and I don't want to turn this into a negative thing, but I think that Andrew is not just a player. He's sort of a symbol of the new Lakers ownership's ability to be a basketball force. And I don't think that serves Andrew Bynum well to be a symbol of that for the new Laker administration or for anyone. He's got to be his own player. He's got to step up and be that person who embraces greatness. And I just wish that Tex could have been there at a time when he could have had a big impact before this process started. Now, I should add that I could be totally wrong about this. Andrew Bynum and the current Laker administration could prove me wrong, but I'm pretty much on the record that they're going to have to do that, because right now I don't think that's been done. And it's a lot of times it ends up being a lot of little things, but those little things speak loudly on a pro basketball team.
Now, lastly, Roland, you know Tex pretty well. You shared all this terrific insight on him, but attending this induction ceremony later on this week, what do you hope to learn about Tex during your trip there?
Well, I'm always learning things about Tex, and that's the Dean Smith story is a perfect example. I want to learn, first of all, one of my prized memories is Tex sitting with Dennis Rodman on that team bus with, April morning in 1998. It's after Bulls practice, and all the Bulls stars have taken off for the golf course or whatever. They've put in their work. But there's Tex Winter in his late 70s. He's working with this 37-year-old forward on chest passes and free throws hours after. I'm just sitting there watching them work. I want to hear Phil Jackson talk about Tex's role in befriending Rodman, being a grandfather figure for him, and how they were able to, Rodman's a force of nature, all this incredible energy and commitment and work ethic. And Tex was such a role in Dennis came to Chicago, he was bankrupt, he was forlorn, his personal life was a mess, and Tex was this steadying figure, as much as there could be for a sort of a lost soul like Dennis. But I'm eager to hear Phil talk about that some, and I'm hoping that in going up there, Phil is going to open up and reveal even more about things. And I think that will be an exciting part of this.
This is the thoughts of longtime Laker author Roland Lazenby. He's written about Tex Winter extensively and plenty of books, including Mind Games, Phil Jackson's Long Strange Journey, and Mad Game, the NBA education of Kobe Bryant. Roland, thanks for all your time today and all your insight on Tex Winter.
Thank you.